All right, so I want to talk about the Jets. Now, obviously, Merlot, you were the only Giant fan. Now I am the only Jet fan in this. Um, we had a really good year in the beginning.
Yeah,
In the
there we
beginning.
go. There we go.
And then things sort of fizzled out. Obviously, ending off the season after starting 6-3, ending it off 7-10 is not exactly what you want. However, there were definitely some positives to take away from the season. Obviously, the biggest one, you're going to have most likely the defensive and offensive rookie of the year. Doesn't happen very often. Last time was actually Kamara and Lattimore for New Orleans. Um, Quinn Williams had a career year. You had 2 first team all pros. I don't even remember the last time the Jets had a first team all pro besides return specialists. So some really good things. Now, I don't need to tell you guys, everybody knows the biggest question mark is quarterback. A lot of people are calling this team a quarterback away. I disagree pretty strongly on that. I think we definitely have some things to figure out. I think on the defensive side of the ball, we're good, but on the offensive side of the ball, we definitely have a lot of things we need to figure out. I guess I'll kind of just open the floor up to you guys as to what you want to talk about first, but I think the most obvious topic that we need to discuss is this team's quarterback situation.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you do hear that phrase being thrown a lot with the Jets that they're a quarterback away. I don't think it's entirely false. We know that they have a ton of young talent, especially on the defense. And like you said, one of the best draft classes, maybe the best draft class. I saw somebody say this today, and honestly, I was looking a little into it, and I might agree with it. Maybe the best draft in Jets history, just based off of the return in one season. I mean, not only did you have the probable offensive rookie of the year in Garrett Wilson, who I believe is already a top 12 receiver in the league, and then Sauce Gardner, who I was the best corner in football this year, and is most likely going to be a star for years to come, and obviously on a rookie contract. But not only that, you also have Jermaine Johnson, who showed flashes of being a capable edge rusher. And then you also have Breece Hall, who was probably going to win Offensive Rookie of the Year if he didn't get hurt. He was on pace to have one of the best rookie seasons for a running back ever. So you have a lot of young pieces, and then obviously you have guys like Quinn Williams. You have guys like DJ Reed. They have Elijah Vera Tucker, who was great. In my opinion, the worst thing that happened to the Jets this year, other than the Breece Hall injury, was and arguably maybe worse than the Breece Hall injury.
It
Was
was
Elijah Vera
worse.
It
Tucker
was worse, yeah.
because their offensive line, if you look at the stats on how it performed, because Elijah Vera Tucker was moving all over the place. He was playing tackle, guard. I think, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think he played a little center, a couple of snaps at center too.
I don't remember that, but he literally played every offensive position besides center on the offensive line.
Yeah, so he was moving all across the offensive line, playing it at a Pro Bowl level. And this is an offensive lineman that's in his second season. He reminded me a lot of Elton Jenkins for the Packers, who they just extended. That the Packers were doing the same thing with him. They shifted him all across the offensive line. He would play at a really high level all over the place. And he ended up actually getting injured too. And he came back this year, struggled a little bit, a little rusty, but ended up finishing the year really strongly. A guy like that is extremely valuable. They have pieces all over the place that you say, that's a guy that we're not paying a lot right now that we could build around. In my opinion, in the NFL, there's a couple of different ways that you could not just win, but win a Super Bowl. People talk about, oh, you got to have that quarterback on the rookie contract so that you could surround him with, X amount of talent, whatever. That's not the only way to win the NFL. I mean, we just saw the Rams go all in, put all their chips on the table, trade for Matt Stafford, sign Odell Beckham Jr., make all the crazy moves that they did, and really go all the way up to that cap limit and then win the Super Bowl. We saw the Buccaneers do the same thing a couple of years ago. They were a quarterback away. They get Tom Brady. They end up winning the Super Bowl. In my opinion, there's a lot of different ways you can win in the NFL. The best way that the Jets could win right now is by taking advantage of the fact that they have all of these young players on the roster that they're not paying a lot and really diving into the cap as much as they can, going out there and getting that quarterback, whether it be an Aaron Rodgers, we'll see if Lamar Jackson is available, maybe Derek Carr. And I think that's their best chance of winning. And the route that they should be going this offseason.
Yeah. I mean, obviously the quarterback is the biggest need. With Vera Tucker, like you said, that injury was just, I mean, it was absolutely the worst thing that possibly could have happened. He was on track. He was going to be an all-pro. Like, he was going to be a first-team all-pro. He was, like you said, playing at a Pro Bowl level at every single position. And that's what I was talking about before when I said I don't think this team's a quarterback away because the offensive line needs to be addressed. You bring Vera Tucker back, that's going to be great for them. I am not even considering Mekhi Becton in like next year's plans. Like, I know he'll be on the team, but like after 2 years of this, like you can't rely on the guy and be like, oh, well, we're getting Becton back because we said the same thing last year. The guy's played 3/4 of football in the past 2 years.
And if I hear that one more time from a Jeff fan, I'm gonna freak out. Can I ask you a question? Can Vera Tucker slide in and be the left tackle for next year? Or are they gonna go else? So you don't have the left tackle, which is kind of concerning right now.
You say that a lot, and I think that you like kind of overrated a little bit. Like, you talk about, you gotta have the coach, you gotta have the quarterback, you gotta have the left tackle, and that's like a very old school like football, like rah, like that's how you build a team. You got like that's I mean, and there's a reason why left tackles are paid so much. It's obviously a very valuable position, but there are also teams that the best player on your offensive line does not have to be your left tackle.
True. No, it doesn't. But they don't they don't have the left tackle. Like they don't, like they don't have the quarterback. They don't have the guy. They're gonna slide in 17 games next year, hopefully, and be that left tackle. It's very important. Name teams that don't have a good left tackle.
The most important thing, I think, is just to address one of the holes you have on the offensive line next year with a very capable player. I mean, I understand Joe's point, and I understand your point, Merle. Left tackle is the most important position on the offensive line. It is the quarterback's blind side, but you want to go and look at the teams that are still remaining in the playoffs right now. Joe Burrow doesn't really have a great left tackle. The Eagles, Lane Johnson and Jason Kelce, none of those guys play left tackle. You got a right tackle.
Jordan Mailata's pretty damn good.
Yeah, Jordan Mailata's no slouch. But it doesn't. You don't have to have a Trent Williams or a David Bakhtiari. So you need to obviously have a capable left tackle. The quarterback play was just so unbelievably bad. Like, if you took all the numbers and combined them between Joe Flacco, Zach Wilson, and Mike White, it's 14 touchdowns and 14 picks. Like, that's really just bad. Absolutely awful. So that's why if you even just get a decent quarterback, like, obviously I want Lamar Jackson, I want Aaron Rodgers, but I'll be happy with a Derek Carr, because if you just get a Derek Carr, Garrett Wilson put up 1,100 yards with those three morons playing quarterback. Could you imagine if he gets even just a capable quarterback? I think the sky's the limit for this guy. Even guys like Elijah Moore. I think if, with the new OC, whoever they get him more involved, you get a more capable quarterback. Who knows what's going to happen there? The number one thing they need to address is the quarterback position. The draft should not even be on the table. Like, no, I'm done. No more drafting quarterbacks. You don't have a top 3 pick. You're not getting Bryce Young. So throw out that idea. And I think they are throwing out that idea. The cap space, this is where it gets a little interesting. They don't have a ton of cap space, the Jets. They do have cut candidates. One of them, I really don't think they should get cute with this and start cutting guys to open up some cap space, stuff like that, because a name that's been floating around is Carl Lawson. You can cut him this year and you could save some money. I don't really get that, because when you brought this guy on, he tears his Achilles his first year. He doesn't even play. He tears it in OTAs, training camp, whatever it was. Missed the entire season. This year, he has a solid year, nothing crazy, but you could tell he wasn't completely recovered from the injury, and he said it himself. The coaching staff said it themselves. He's not completely recovered. Give him a little time to rehab, come back next year, and he could make that defensive line, the defense overall, even more dangerous. My biggest thing, I would say, besides, obviously, we talked about the quarterback, talked about the offensive line, I would like to maybe see them get one more receiver, just because I don't know if I could trust Elijah Moore. Even if the offensive coordinator gets involved, who knows what's going to happen with him? He's a little bit of a head. We've seen all the stuff that's gone down, the drama. I'm disappointed. It wasn't the best free agent class. Tight end, that's something I'm looking. I would look into, but I don't know if they will. Tyler Conklin was really not a great signing, and Uzama, I mean, they barely even used him, but
I spent some money there, and I agree with you. The wide receiver isn't a pressing need, but and you don't need a number one, but it would be nice probably to get another receiver in there. Corey Davis is unreliable with injury, but if he slots in as a number 3 or even 4 guy, you feel very comfortable about that. I think you kind of nailed it on the head there. The offensive line needs to, be improved. They obviously need a quarterback, and the three of us disagree on this. You two and me, and that's the head coach. I thought what they did with the defense this season was obviously very impressive. I mean, every defensive rank, I mean, they're at the top of the league. You got to give him some credit. He's defensive head coach. I kind of have a thing of it against defensive head coaches, and that's not fair. But this is where I'm gonna go kind of against him. The quarterback situation was terrible last year, and that's not on him. But I didn't love his handling of it all season long. That's number one. Number two, I think he's going to be in a situation next year where it's playoffs or bust, where if he misses the playoffs, either he's going to be on a really hot seat or possibly fired. And I don't like that with a coach going in an all or nothing season where the pressure is going to be completely on him and getting this team to the playoffs. And listen, they could bring in a great quarterback, and you might not be worried about it. If they bring in Aaron Rodgers, you're probably not going to be worried about them making the playoffs. I don't, think they're going to be getting Aaron Rodgers. But let's say they added Derek Carr, you're going to have a ton of pressure to make the playoffs. And if he did not make the playoffs in a stacked AFC, I think you're probably starting over at the head coaching position there as well. And I don't like that.
I mean, that sounds. I mean, it doesn't sound like you dislike Salah. It seems like you dislike the expectations for Salah.
I dislike the expectation. I dislike the expectation that he's going to have. I'm not the biggest Salah guy. I'm not like, oh, they should fire him, but I'm not,
I don't going to
be the head
coach
for the next 10 years.
I don't get why you're not the biggest Salah guy, because yeah, sure, he's a defensive head coach, and that's another thing. I think we get way too wrapped up in the who's a defensive head coach,
I agree.
who's an offensive
I think
head
that's
coach,
like
and all
the
that
most
stuff.
overrated. I think that's
I think we get way too wrapped up in that stuff. Obviously,
it just makes your OC hire much more important.
They need to hire an OC. Agreed. They need to get a good.
And they need to hit it on the head.
LaFleur did not work out at all. Yeah, I think Salah is obviously the reason why they brought him in is we talked about it after Adam Gase was they needed to change the culture. And I think he's done that. I think he's done a fantastic job of doing that. I think that this team plays hard. They were one of the best fourth quarter teams in the league this year up until their little collapse. They play hard all the way through every single game. They want to play for the guy. Every player speaks very highly of him, says they'll run through a wall for that guy, blah, 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 blah. So I do think we've got to figure out a head coach, to be honest with you. I think we need to figure out some things. And you never completely figure something out. Sometimes things don't work out. But in terms of my stress levels and what I'm worried about most with this team, head coach is very much, besides corner, number one receiver, and D tackle, and running back, and Elijah Vera Tucker is right there at that point, honestly. The fact that he took this team, you said that we were very good in defensive rankings, but the fact that he literally took the team from being the dead last defense last year, and I know you didn't have Sauce Gardner, but we didn't go out and get all these different types of pieces. There were still a lot of guys from that same team that are on this defense. You go out and you make this a top 5 defense in the league. You get C.J. Mosley, who was starting to look like he was declining a little bit. You may get him to a second team All-Pro. He did a fantastic job. And yes, the offensive coordinator hire is going to have to be very important. I'm really intrigued to see what happens first, if they're going to hold off on the offensive coordinator for a little while. I don't know how long you could keep that job open for, but the quarterback's going to have something to do with the offensive coordinator. So I feel like that's going to have a lot to do with the hiring. I know the Ravens fired Greg Roman, and I'm pretty sure him and Derek Carr have a link to each other. So we'll see if that happens. Aaron Rodgers, if he comes over, Nathaniel Hackett's available right now. So I don't know. I don't really know what's going to happen. Yeah, I mean, that's the next thing I want to talk about. If we brought Aaron Rodgers along, obviously I would be extremely happy. But What do you guys think it would take, and what do you think you would give to get Aaron Rodgers?
I think realistically, and this conversation is of course painful for me to talk about as a Packers fan, and just because of how much I love Rodgers, I would not hate the idea of them trading him this offseason. I think that unfortunately all good things do need to come to an end at some point, and it does make sense. But from the Jets' perspective, I think that it's probably going to take at least one first. I think that I think it depends on how the market plays out for him too. I think that if Rodgers basically tells the Packers, "Hey, listen, I know Nathaniel Hackett's going to go to the Jets. I want to go to the Jets, and if you don't trade me to the Jets, I'll just retire." Then it's going to hinder the Packers' leverage, and they're not going to be able to get as much from him as they would like. But if Rodgers just says, "You know what, I want to," or if the Packers say to him, "Listen, honestly, we want to move on. We want to go to Love next year. We're going to trade you elsewhere." Then there could be a market for Aaron Rodgers, and that could kind of determine his value. I mean, if you have teams like the Raiders and the Colts and these other teams jumping in, then it could drive the price point up to 2 first-round picks. If you're the New York Jets, you have to sit there and you have to say, are we willing to risk our future? 3 years from now, let's say Rodgers, you get a commitment from Rodgers that he's going to play 2 more seasons. Okay. Are you willing to say we are willing to give up 2 first-round picks? And the way that the Jets have been drafting recently, those 2 first-round picks could be really good players. So are you going to say we think that we have a Super Bowl window with all these guys on these rookie deals, all these young players, the talent that we have? We think that Sal is the right guy at head coach. We're going to make the right hire at offensive coordinator. Is it worth it to give up 2 first-round picks for Aaron Rodgers? If I'm the New York Jets, I'm doing it. I mean, at some point, enough is enough. I mean, this team is absolutely cursed at the quarterback position. And, Rodgers didn't have a great year this year. There's no guarantee that Rodgers is going to come in.
Yeah, but even this is what I was thinking about before, is I was like, oh, like if you told me Aaron Rodgers a year ago was going to be on the trade market, like I would really be losing my mind. He's coming off an MVP or whatever like that. And then I'm like, oh, but this year, like he had a down year, blah, blah, blah. And I'm saying to myself, I'm like, what does it even matter that he had a little bit of a down year? Now, obviously, I think a big part of it has to do with Devontae Adams, the best receiver in the whole league, left. And they just had a down year overall in everything, basically. When was the last time we even just had a competent guy to just go out there and play quarterback? You know what I mean? Like, we haven't even had anything close. A washed-up Rodgers is the best quarterback in Jets franchise history.
Yeah,
like, he really is.
Are you listen? I don't think Rodgers is washed up, so I'm not. But I'm just throwing the hypothetical at you that let's say they did trade for Rodgers and he ended up being like a serviceable quarterback the next 2 years. Like he ended up being like the 13th, 14th best quarterback in the league the next 2 seasons. Trading 2 first-round picks and taking on that cap hit as well it's not worth it at that point. If you're trading 2 first-round picks for Aaron Rodgers because you think that he's capable of playing at the level that he did in years prior where he won back-to-back MVPs before this season. And I think that he is still more than capable. I mean, as a Packers fan and somebody that, watched him the whole year, and then also a guy who, is very into stats and analytics, I don't think there are any indicators that he has regressed physically. I think that there were a lot of issues with the offense. I think Rodgers is a big we were talking about this earlier today, Jam. He's a big guy he's heavy on chemistry and there was the whole storyline with his hand signals and these young wide receivers, Christian Watson, Romeo Dobbs were having, trouble adjusting to it. And then, other than when Christian Watson broke out in the second half of the season, let's be real, Rodgers had very little weapons around him, guys not getting separation. The offensive line ended up playing really well over the second half of the year, but they had a lot of injuries, they're in the first half, and then let's also not forget that Rodgers broke his thumb on his throwing hand. Yeah. And if you look at the way his numbers were affected ever since he broke his thumb, I believe it was against the Commanders. I mean, you would have to imagine that playing with a broken thumb. I know that he downplayed it a lot, and I think that's such an underrated part of Aaron Rodgers, and it has been his whole career, is his toughness. Of course, he's going to downplay that. He's not going to make excuses, and he never has. I mean, this is a guy that has played through injuries so many times throughout his career. And I think it really affected him. I think that a fully healthy Rodgers on the Jets, if they hire Nathaniel Hackett or really any other guy that's going to implement a Shanahan type scheme, I think that he is more than capable of taking the Jets where they want to go.
Now, let's say he's bottom of the top 10. And you have a commitment for 2 years. I think it's still worth the 2 first-round picks, to be completely honest with you, around top 10. Because, like JM said, he'd be arguably the greatest quarterback in Jet history, just as that type of guy. Let's look at it from an Aaron Rodgers standpoint, though, for a second. Okay, I know we're talking about the Jets here, but the Jets do play in a tough division with Josh Allen and Bill Belichick, and now the Dolphins on the come up. If they say to him, listen, we are not trading you to an NFC team, but we're going to trade you to an AFC team, and we would like your input. Would he rather go to the AFC South, or would he rather go to the AFC East? I think the Titans and the Colts are also a big-time player for him.
I don't think it's that simple, though. I don't think it's just a division.
If I'm Aaron Rodgers, why the hell would you want to go to the Colts? That's just me.
Yeah, I agree.
I would steer so clear. That's where the quarterbacks go to die. I mean, seriously.
No, I get that. I've heard that team thrown around, and Jim Irsay is a nut job owner and would give him, basically whatever he wants. I tend to agree with you. I think the Titans, to me, are like the number one destination if I was Aaron Rodgers.
Why would he want to go there? The
Titans, to me, are on the decline. I know I respect the hell out of Mike Vrabel. I think he's a top 10 coach in football. The Titans' future, look at the weapons they got there. Besides, obviously, you got Derrick Henry, but Derrick Henry's not going to be young forever. And then the receivers, Treylon Burks is really the only thing that is remotely attractive. Robert Woods is, all right, he's on the back end.
They need to add a receiver 100%. But I love Vrabel. I think Vrabel's a great coach. I think he would enjoy playing in Nashville, Tennessee, and I think the defense, obviously, they're competitive every season. They almost made the playoffs this year with Joshua freaking Dobbs starting at the end of the year. So I still think that is a team that is going to be competitive. But let's just bring it back to the Jets for a second. I want to talk not really X's and O's, but I want to talk about this guy in New York. I think that there is a chance that Aaron Rodgers in New York would be a train wreck. Not with the playing, not the playing side. I think his play would be, he'll be a good player and he'll win them games, but the off the field stuff I think could get messy.
I understand what you're saying, but I think if we're having this conversation 15, 20 years ago, I think that's a fantastic point. I think now with the way social media and the way the
I think it's worse
now and everything like that, I don't think it's worse. I think wherever you go, you're going to be under the microscope.
That's not true.
And they're going to Merlo, he was already getting slandered. Exactly. They were taking little audio bits and saying, Aaron Rodgers said this. He hates his family, ayahuasca, or whatever the hell he's doing. All this BS. And they were just ripping him apart. He's a national name. You go around and you say Aaron Rodgers, he might be the name besides Tom Brady that people recognize the most, even if you don't watch football in America.
No,
people know who Aaron Rodgers is.
No, I agree with you, but the New York, it's no joke when people and players and coaches and broadcasters.
I understand what you're saying, but also understand that, like I said about this Jets team and this Jets franchise, it's starving for a quarterback. Has not had a great quarterback since Joe Namath, literally. I think if he comes, he might be treated like a god. I know he'll get a little scrutinized by the media because maybe he might say something, but I don't think it's going to be too much.
But also, the reason why I acted or reacted so adversely to when you were, first starting the point was I thought that you were implying that Rodgers can't, he's been in small town Green Bay, and how is he going to handle New York? And he might crumble in New York. I think, if anything, I don't understand still kind of what you're implying because, sure, I could totally see the New York media, the next time Rodgers goes on Joe Rogan, if he was on the Jets and, he says something about the Pfizer vaccine or some shit, that I could totally see, the New York Daily News having a field day with that. But I think Aaron Rodgers doesn't give a shit. Rodgers,
he really doesn't.
Rodgers last year, he came under scrutiny after the whole immunized thing and all that shit, and he ended up after that. I mean, he dealt with so much backlash from that, and he missed the Chiefs game. He comes back after the Chiefs game, and he goes on this like unbelievable run that people. I remember when the story first came out, people saying there's no way the writers are ever going to give Rodgers MVP ever again, and then literally 10 weeks later, he won MVP.
Yeah.
I don't think Rodgers cares if the New York.
It may not be that Rodgers cares. Again, this is a different animal, and I'm going to say it.
But what are you
small
implying?
town
what's
Green
like
Bay.
the end?
There are a couple of things that he has said that I don't really know if I want to repeat right now. Yeah, I will. He has said he has actually asked the question if whether or not 9/11 was a hoax. He will be questioned about that like no tomorrow here in New York.
I get what you're saying.
The COVID vaccine and the way he acts about it. He made a comment today about Pfizer. I need to look and see what it was. He made a comment the last couple of days about Pfizer. He will get annihilated by this New York media for the stupid, cute little things he says on the Pat McAfee show. It will be a lot different
but at the end
than
of the
Pat
day,
McAfee and his boys reacting to it, or the Green Bay media when they see him, every few days after practice. It's going to be a lot different.
Yeah, but at the end of the day, what does it matter if he plays at a great level on the field and he's helping the Jets win? Like, I get what you're saying. I agree with what you're saying in general, that yes, the New York media is obviously harsher than, I mean, not just the Green Bay media, than pretty much any other city's media. I maybe Boston is the closest. I agree with you on that. But at the end of the day, I mean, this is a guy that is not unfamiliar with dealing with criticism from the media. And I don't think it affects his play on the field at all. So why does it matter? I mean, so what? If the New York media is going to rip him to shreds over this, and that, but then he goes out and he, wins an MVP, or he helps the Jets win a Super Bowl or whatever, then who cares? Yeah. I mean, I think the Jets will sign up for that every day of the week.
No, and the fans will obviously, whatever they disagree with, they will, most of them, forgive him for anything that he says that pisses them off, or anything that comes out, any story about him that would come off. But you got to remember something. This isn't their guy. Obviously Aaron Rodgers is drafted by the Packers. He's like their son in some case. He was raised there. He won a Super Bowl. He's been there his entire career.
Yeah.
So obviously he's almost like the perfect child. Things that are flying in Green Bay, and just take the media out of it, will not fly here in New York. And listen, we don't know how that's Joe. We don't know how that's going to affect his play. We have no clue. I would probably
from the national media
I would side with you that it is most likely not going to affect his play too much. I would most likely say
I don't think it's going to affect it at all.
We don't know that, because he really has not been criticized by the team's media, by the team.
He talked about it. He talked about how he's. I don't know if you saw that that bit. I actually saw it today. He was talking about how in sports, some guys get depicted as the hero, some guys get depicted as the villain. He's been depicted as the villain, and he's really embraced that role, and he recognizes that. So I don't really think that he cares. He's talked about the whole woke culture and everything like that, how he doesn't care about that. So I don't really think that the media, breathing down his neck about every little thing that he says. Obviously, there might be some awkward and some controversial moments, but I don't really think that it's gonna be a situation where it turns into a disaster.
Yeah, and I think that, listen, I disagree with a lot of things that Aaron Rodgers says. I'm not necessarily on the same wavelength as him with a lot of with things he says about the vaccine and whatever. Just, I mean, you mentioned conspiracy theories and things like that. I'm not with Rodgers there, but at the same time, and this is just me personally, I don't really care what his opinions are, because at the end of the day, like JM said, I like that he's embraced this sort of like, okay, like I'm gonna speak my mind. I'm gonna say what I want, and I don't care if the media is gonna come after me for it. And also, there are things that he is right about, because there was that thing last week when he was on Pat McAfee and he was talking about his future, and he said, I think I'm still capable of winning an MVP. And then like 3 sentences later, or 3 sentences before, whatever, I forget, he did mention something about, at the end of the day, if I do come back, it's going to be because I want to win a Super Bowl. And, what's the point of playing if you're not going to win a Super Bowl? But people took that one little clip he said, about the MVP thing, and Rob Gronkowski is on Fox Sports talking about, well, if you shouldn't be talking about MVPs, you should be talking about Super Bowls. He did talk about Super Bowls. I think that he's already, the reason why I'm saying all this is because he's already dealt with all, and he actually called it out today, or yesterday on the Pat McAfee show about how they took this little soundbite and they used it against him, and he got such a kick out of it. I think that Rodgers, if there's any quarterback that's going to deal with the media and take it in stride, it's Aaron Rodgers, because I understand what you're saying, that little Green Bay, Wisconsin, which is a town that loves football more than any other town, mind you. They're not going to put his feet to the fire the way the New York media is going to, but he's dealt with so much scrutiny from the national media that I don't think it matters. I
The
think
national media is not the New York media, though. I think that's what we're forgetting. It's not the New York media.
You're right.
Listen,
no, he's right. It's worse.
It's not. The New York media is a different animal than the national media.
He was dealing with scrutiny from everybody's media last year with that whole immunize thing. And he went out and he won MVP, and he played like some of the best football of his career.
And the way New Yorkers work, New Yorkers most likely looked at that like, oh, whatever. When he's here and he's caught, let's say he's causing some ruckus, New Yorkers will say, oh, Aaron Rodgers, bad guy. Now they care that he's here. They don't care that he's in Green Bay and doing his thing, running his mouth. Here,
well, this is just like the time when in the beginning of the year when you said the whole thing with Rob Saleh with the receipts and blah 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 blah.
I mean, how'd that go?
It doesn't turn into it actually went very well compared to the way you thought it was going to be.
Yeah, well, there's still no receipts. The beat reporters should go and give him their receipts. God. That's what they should do. Listen, I'm not predicting it to be a train wreck. I think it would be wildly entertaining. I think the issues that we brought up, the conspiracy theories and the vaccines, would come up 100%. I would actually agree with you. I don't think he'll be a train wreck. Like I said in the beginning of this, I don't think it would be a train wreck, but it would be wildly entertaining, him in New York with the New York media.
So we've been pretty focused on Aaron Rodgers for a little bit, and maybe, the prospect of him going to the Jets is obviously very exciting. But let's say Aaron Rodgers either retires or he's not traded or he's traded elsewhere. You have other names that are on the QB market. You've got Lamar Jackson potentially. I think that I'm a little bit more or less sure, I should say, that he was going to not be a Raven than I was even like a couple of weeks ago, because I don't know if you guys saw, he actually now is like helping them find a replacement for Greg Roman at offensive coordinator. And the fact that they're involving him in the search, I mean, it would be kind of weird if they involved him in the search and then they traded him. But I mean, listen, if they come at him with another, contract offer that he doesn't like, I mean, anything's on the table. I mean, he could end up being franchise tagged, he could hold out, and then he could be traded, later on as we get closer to the season. Who knows? And then also, the name that we know is not going to be a Raider next year. We know he's going to be traded, is Derek Carr. How much? I'll start off with this, JM. What would you be willing to give up for Lamar Jackson as a Jets fan? And if Lamar ends up not being available, what are you willing to part with to get Derek Carr? Do you even want Derek Carr at all? I'll let you kind of take over here.
Well, I'll start with Derek Carr quickly, just because I don't know what we would have to give up for Derek Carr. I feel like it's kind of like a sticky situation because he signed that contract, but you could get out of it in a couple years, and it's also an odd situation because we know he's going to get traded, and if he doesn't get traded, he's going to get released. So I'm not sure what they're going to have to do for Derek Carr. I would be satisfied if we did get Derek Carr. Obviously, be a little disappointed considering we're throwing out a couple MVPs and Lamar Jackson and Aaron Rodgers names are getting thrown around, but I would still be happy if we got Derek Carr. Lamar Jackson, so you got to trade for him and you got to sign him, right? You got to give him the extension. I'd be willing to give up 3 first-round picks. And I don't know what else it's going to take, but I feel like, I got to go back to see what the Seahawks got for Wilson. I know it was at least 1 to 2 first-round picks. I don't know how many first-round picks it was.
I believe it was 2 firsts and then all the players.
And Russell Wilson is over 30 years old. Lamar Jackson is what, 26, something like that. So
young.
Obviously, three first round picks is probably the floor for what they're going to have to give up for him.
Well,
So
Deshaun Watson got what? They gave up two first round picks or three first round picks, the Browns, for him.
I don't know. I'd have to check that, but then yeah, they also threw the bag at him,
Yeah.
which we'll see how that works out for them. I feel like it's gonna be a little bit of a Browns move, but I kind of moved on from Lamar mentally in my head just because it seems extremely unlikely. Obviously, I would love if the guy was on the team, but like you were just talking about, the Ravens are already including him and searching for an offensive coordinator after they fired Greg Roman. And it just doesn't see it's also the most expensive option, and it really just seems like the most unlikely, especially since you're trading him within the conference, and there's a lot of complications that go into that. Carr is another guy where, we throw around Derek Carr and the likes of Jimmy Garoppolo and Kirk Cousins and Jared Goff and guys like that. That middle of the pack tier. I think I think Derek Carr would do well in New York. We gotta, like we discussed about the Jets, we gotta figure out the offensive coordinator and build that style of offense around Derek Carr, something that caters to the way he plays. But I'd be happy with him too.
Yeah, I kind of agree with you. I don't think Lamar is an option. The night of the wild card round, I was with a few people and I'm like, he's gone, he's leaving. And a couple of days after, you hear what John Harbaugh has to say, and you're like, all right, you know what, he's probably gonna be back. And I think 100%. And the thing about the AFC is true too. They would not trade him within the conference. They would get him out of the conference. So I don't even think Lamar is anything to discuss. Obviously, we discussed Rodgers. I don't think Carr's going to cost much. I think you take on the money. I think what is he going to get you going to get a first round pick for him?
No,
I don't even think
I don't
so.
think he won't cost the first round pick
So-
because teams know that if he's not like there's not a lot of leverage on the Raiders end. Teams
Right.
know that he'll just be released if nobody gives up a first round pick for him. I don't even think that's.
And I don't think anyone's like in love with Derek Carr. Well, they'll
Yeah.
be like, no, we want him before you release him.
Right. Derek Carr's not going to be the Jets' first option. They're going to look at
Yeah.
the Rodgers thing first. If let's say Carr goes elsewhere, let's say Carr's in Washington and Rodgers is staying put, let's just say, and now you're like, where do the Jets go? I honestly have absolutely no clue. Does Baker Mayfield become an option? He was, pretty good over there with Sean McVay.
That would be like, shoot me if Baker Mayfield is.
That would be like nightmarish scenario for the Jets.
I would say Jimmy G probably would.
Jimmy G comes into he's an option, but I think the whole thing was Mike LaFleur and Rob Saleh and Jimmy G makes perfect sense, and it still could make sense. Jimmy G could still make sense for this team, but it's kind of less sense now that LaFleur is there and the 49er connection is a little bit lost there with the offensive coach. But Jimmy G obviously is an option. After that, though, what else is there
honestly
aside from the nightmare scenario of Baker Mayfield?
I really hope I don't eat my words here, but I don't think at that point, I can't see any of those guys not being Jets, and then it's just, what the hell are we going to do now? I think that when you talk about what teams out there need a quarterback, I think the Jets are one of the most attractive destinations for any of those guys. I think they have the draft capital, the ammo to go trade for one of those guys. There's really nothing about it that makes it, oh, you're going to lose out on a guy like this. And now you're looking at Jacoby Brissett. And I'm not even going to say Baker's name. By the way, I hate you for saying that. That was our friendship.
I heard it a couple of days ago, and I was like,
I would rather
imagine that.
If I were the Jets, I would rather just run it back with Zach Wilson and sign Baker.
Yeah, exactly. At that point, and also if that happens, just please kill me.
Baker Mayfield in New York would be a train wreck, and I would predict that.
Yeah.
I think Baker Mayfield anywhere is a train wreck. I don't.
Other than LA, hey, listen, I think they should keep him. Honest to God, I think. Yes, I think they should sign him.
Yeah,
and he played pretty well with Sean McVay, and if Sean McVay thinks they have something with him, Stafford is, he's got a neck injury, he's not looking good. I wouldn't predict him to be the quarterback even in 2 years for them. So Yeah,
They should really rebuild the Rams. I know this is kind of off topic, but
Yeah,
they should really rebuild. And the fact that Sean McVay is coming back now is going to make them not rebuild. And they were going to blow it up if he left, but they should have. They should. Rebuild. They're in cap hell, aging roster. You sold out to win a Super Bowl, and you went all in, and it worked. But now you got to let go.
Back to what I just want to say this: Woody Johnson, I think, is kind of in that mode right now where he actually cares about what's going on with the team.
Yeah.
And he has said that he is willing to spend whatever to go get a quarterback, and that's obviously a good thing. I think with the commitment from the owner, meaning the money is not going to be an issue no matter what. And I know it's different in baseball and in other sports where, the owner has signed off on it. No, it's a cap sport. You're going to spend X amount of money. I just think they are motivated. I think they're going to get at least, like you said, a Derek Carr, Jimmy G,
right,
and avoid that, nightmare scenario.
And that's fine, and I'm all right with that. If we get a Jimmy G or a Derek Carr, like I'll set my dreams at an Aaron Rodgers. I'll shoot for the stars, but if I land on the moon and it's Jimmy G or Derek Carr, I'm okay with that. The last thing I'll say before we stop talking about the Jets, the future first round picks. Now, obviously, you want to hold on to your draft capital. But I'm going to look at it from this perspective. We've drafted 5 guys in the first round over the past 2 years. So, yeah, you're not going to have your first round pick for the next 2 years. But you've already had all these top picks. And then not even to mention Breece Hall, who was the 36th overall pick. That's right outside the first round. Like you've gotten enough premier talent in the draft. And these guys are going to be around for a couple of years where you could afford to eat giving up a first round pick over the next year or two. I mean,
well, hopefully you're
even look at the Jets draft history. I'll do it very briefly. Obviously, this year you had Sauce and Garrett Wilson, 2 home runs, and then Jermaine Johnson. Those are your first round picks. The year before, Zach Wilson, we don't even need to discuss how bad that was. Elijah Tucker, there's your other first round pick. Mekhi Becton, dud. Still has time, but I've given up on him. Quinnen Williams, that's a hit. Sam Darnold, dud. Jamal Adams, great, traded him. Darren Lee, Leonard Williams, Calvin Pryor, D. Milner, Sheldon Richardson. Like, they're not hitting on a lot of these first-round picks. So, sure, Joe Douglas wasn't the GM then. It's a different regime. Why are you even comparing there? All I'm saying is you're at the point now where you're actually not dog shit. Like you're like a decent football team with a Super Bowl caliber defense. Like, I'm sorry, they do have a Super Bowl caliber defense.
Yeah, they do.
So just go out and, fully loaded, go get the freaking quarterback. Do what you got to do.
Well, also, hopefully they're not picking early in the first round. It's a late first round pick. And second of all, again, you're not trading all of your picks. If Joe Douglas is a good GM, which he is, he will find players in the second and the third and the fourth round where you really win drafts.
Yeah.
So it's not all about the first round, too. So if you have a good team, 100%, I'm willing to mortgage that part of the future.
Right.